all of our phenomenal viewers, listeners, and supporters. I am your host, Mary, and welcome to another episode of Connected, where we discuss all things mental health, recovery, employment, and stories. Our guest today is number 10 in the CRA and races in the AFM. He'll explain that to you if you're not into motorcycle racing. He is also the co-founder of Remix Racing Project, a group that helps fight mental health stigma literally in the pits. He wrote the influential book, Remix Recovery, Leading a Brave Space. He has also run a PHP program and teaches continuing education classes. Here is the very busy Jeremy Taubman.
Hi, good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Jeremy. So, how do you get to be number 10 in the CRA?
Yeah, so CRA, the California Road Race Association, is a regional club that operates out of Southern and Central California. They've been around for several years, and I've been racing with them for most of the time that they've been in operation. And to get a top 10 number, you have to do quite a bit. You have to race a lot. You have to do fairly well. You have to collect a lot of points. And I was basically 10th out of the entire championship of all classes. And so for a full season, I got to run the number 10 plate in CRA.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah.
What's your number normally?
Yeah. So I've had several numbers, but in addition to CRA and AFM, which are regional like club races that operate here in California, I also race professionally in Moto America, which is a national professional race series. And in that series, I raced number 417. Right. And because it's really become part of my brand and the team's brand, Remix Racing, we've decided to just use that number even in our regional and club racing championship. So 417 is my number.
Well, I understand that. My first husband was a racer, and he was number 69 in the AFM, American Federation of Motorcyclists. Did I blow that one?
No, you got it.
Oh, I remember it from all those years ago. But it's an important part of identity and branding. So literally in the pits, tell me how this works.
Yeah, so about 3.5 years ago, Shayna, my girlfriend, who's also our team manager, she and I founded the Remix Racing Project. It's a 501c3 nonprofit with a mission primarily to fight mental health and addiction stigma, raise awareness, create brave spaces, which I know we'll be talking about during this interview, help connect people to low barrier or even no barrier resources necessary to support or treat mental health conditions. And initially the idea was that so many of us, I'm a person with a lot of lived experience. I'm in recovery from addiction. I've been facing mental health challenges my entire life, which, probably contributed to my addiction and continues to be just part of how I have to manage my life in the last 23 years since I've been in recovery. But it turned out that I'm in good company in the racing community, that there's a lot of us that are attracted to riding motorcycles, maybe. We call it throttle therapy. It's a time when I'm racing the motorcycle, I'm on the track, my head is clear. I'm a person who worries a lot. I get overwhelmed by excessive anxiety and worry. And when I'm riding, a lot of that just kind of fades into the background. I'm able to focus better. I'm a person who easily gets distracted. And so being on the motorcycle, I'm able to really focus and stay fully present.
Well, you have to.
You have to. It's absolutely for survival and performance. But really in the motorcycle community, motorcycles, of course, are stigmatized in kind of out in
yes.
So in the community, we find that sharing a passion for something that isn't well understood by maybe the rest of our family, friends, and neighbors and everything else creates a kind of a connection within that community to one another that's really strong. And there's a lot of people in the community who don't ride motorcycles, but they still have a passion for the sport. And so there's something I think also very therapeutic about connections, which of course is probably a reason why Connections House has chosen that name. There's something really special about building bonds with other people who are like-minded, who share interests and share passions for things that make life fun, exciting, and worthwhile. And so we discovered that there are a lot of folks with lived experience inside the racing community, and we founded our nonprofit initially with the idea that we would help kind of create a space where people could just show up as they are, bring all the baggage from life with them, and hopefully still feel comfortable in their own skin, feel proud of who they are, what they've survived to get here, and support one another in chasing our dreams and really kind of leaning in to our passion. Motorcycle racing, of course, it's a passion you have to be willing to sacrifice almost anything for. It's a dangerous sport.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, we did that, and it was really well received in the racing community. And then we started talking to our community partners, including Mental Health Connections and others in the community, about what we were doing. And we started building those relationships that allowed us to introduce our nonprofit to the rest of the community, even outside of the racing community. And during the first year, we got so much attention and so much traction with that idea that a lot of people were wanting to kind of join the movement and join what we were building. And so one of our early ideas was, what if we brought people who maybe weren't all that familiar with motorcycles or racing, or maybe had never been to a race? What if we brought them to the races with us? It's both because it's fun and exciting, and also then they have an opportunity to be immersed in that community full of connection and support and everything else. And so we did some of that, and did some of that with Connections members in our first year, and it went really well. And then as our organization continued to grow and develop, among the many things that we've done since then, one of them is that when we go to our races, especially when we race in the national professional organization, Moto America, we go all over the country. And there's tens of thousands of live spectators, and then there's millions of people who watch the live streaming or the social media posts and the YouTube videos all over the world, most of them in the US, but all over the world. And we thought, that gives us a platform to really make an impact, especially given our mission to fight mental health stigma. I mean, one of the most effective ways to fight mental health stigma is to just have open, candid, normalized conversations about it, right? Stigma, it breeds in the shadows and it dies in the light. And so we would have these conversations with people at the races, and we started putting mental health exhibits in our pit. And the pit, of course, as you know, is the area where our motorcycle is set up and our team operates and gets the bike ready, gets me ready to get on the bike and go out to ride. And we would have a mental health exhibit so that when people would come up to take a look at our pit, there are times during the weekend where they come up and they want to meet the racer and meet the team. They start asking questions about our exhibit, which gives us the perfect opportunity to have a conversation with them.
That's something that if people haven't been to the races, they don't know, is that there are times, of course, there's times in the middle of a race, no, you don't go in the pits. But there's lots of downtime when you are allowed, just as a spectator, to go out and meet the racers and the mechanics and their wives, and often the kids too, who are there handing the wrenches.
Yeah, it's really something. I don't think of myself as special. I'm just somebody who's trying to find my way, make my way through life, and do things that I love, and do it with the people that I love, and and at my age, it's also about, making memories. I don't know how much longer I get to do this. And, but the fans, including little kids, will come up and they'll have me sign. We have posters, sign my autograph on their hats and their shirts and you name it. And so I temporarily have this kind of hero status. And what I tell people when they come up and ask about our exhibit is I say, I'm just like you. I'm just like everybody else. But one of the ways that I take care of myself and my mental health is I do things that I love. I do things that make life fun and exciting and meaningful, give me a sense of purpose, and chase my passion and my dreams. And I tell them about my lived experience. I tell them about my mental health challenges. I tell them about my addiction. And what happens is that there are so many of us. Once we start talking about it, you find that we're really, like I said earlier, in good company. And so, the fans, they start telling me about their experience, their lived experience with mental health, addiction, their family member, loved ones, with suicide, with trauma. I mean, you name it. And we're having this really brave conversation with motorcycles racing in the background. And I know that they're probably thinking this is the strangest place to have this conversation, but it just feels right. And it feels comfortable being brave, having the conversation. So we're building on that. And at some point in this interview, I'd love to tell you about what we're doing in just a week and a half, where we're actually going to be connecting people in those moments of brave vulnerability at the races, connecting them to resources. And of course, Mental Health Connections is going to be represented there.
So you're in a way, you're becoming, or at least providing referral services to a lot of, then that means you're spending a lot of time outside the races on the web, identifying. You're going to Laguna Seca this July. I know there's a big race.
Next week, yep.
Next week. And so at least there, Northern California, you already got your references. But when you go to Colorado, do you take the time to find some local numbers and have things ready?
Yeah, we're starting to work our way into that. Again, we're relatively new. We're small but growing, small and mighty. And so our first event at one of these races, where we're actually connecting people to local resources at the races, is going to be next weekend at Laguna, not this upcoming weekend, but the following weekend at Laguna Seca. And Mental Health Connections is going to be there. It's going to be represented. Excellent. Along with several other community partners that we work with that are supporting the event, to help make this happen, but also so that they can be there representing their services and resources, so that when people are coming up having these brave and candid conversations with us, if they're in need of help for them or a family member, loved one, that they can actually get connected, find out what's available in their own backyard right then and there. We're expecting this to be a huge success, a win for everybody. And I'm going to say when that happens, not if it happens, then we know we'll have a model that we want to recreate at our races all over the country.
Are you looking to eventually expand beyond just the motorcycle race community?
Absolutely. And in fact, what a great segue. So toward the end of our first year, which was back in 2023, so not too long ago, 2023, like I said, we were pretty popular quickly. A lot of traction, a lot of interest, a lot of people really excited about what we were doing. But then people started asking us, do we need to really like motorcycles or be into this in order to participate?
Right.
And it occurred to me that accidentally, inadvertently, we had created a barrier. And part of our core, at our core, one of our values is to reduce or eliminate barriers to allow people access to whatever it is that they need. Mm-hmm. And so we thought, what a great opportunity to build on what we've been doing, but create something that doesn't have barriers, or at least as few as possible. And that's where we kind of founded the idea, the concept of Remix Recovery. So the race team is Remix Racing. The nonprofit is called the Remix Racing Project. But then we created this other project, or like a division, called Remix Recovery. And Remix Recovery is not motorcycle related, affiliated, or whatever. But it's a concept, it's a recovery model that is really based on the idea of being the most inclusive way to connect with others and with support and resources and the most inclusive community. And the way that we developed this idea was I started writing a book. You referenced it in the intro, Remix Recovery, Leading a Brave Space. Started writing the book actually at the end of that first year because of these questions that people were asking about how can I get involved even if I don't like motorcycles. And I should say that the name remix, we chose that because it means changing or adding to the original to create something new and improved. And I think a lot of us identify that way, right? Like I didn't have to throw away the old me. I just wanted to learn from all of my experiences and build on those, keep the stuff that works and fix or replace the stuff that doesn't, and become a better version of my former self. The way we operate, we think, is a remixed way of carrying the message, of doing the work, and the goodwill, the outreach, and all of that. It builds on stuff that already exists that works really well, and we're just trying to either do it better or different, or fill in gaps, or pick up where other people leave off. And so Remix Recovery takes a bunch of concepts about how people recover from mental illness or addiction. Actually, in the book, we don't really distinguish between those two the way that a lot of folks do. That it's all part of just what makes life a little more difficult or challenging for some people. And we take all of these evidence-based, well-established principles and practices, and we remix them into a new, what we believe is a more, if not the most inclusive way to build a life of recovery and join a community of people who are on their own healing journey. And we published that book in July of 2024. And at the same time, we launched what is now a small but growing network of peer-led support groups based on that model. Again, we believe that they're the most inclusive type of community-based peer-led support group available. We don't think of our model or our groups as competing with other support groups, right, but just providing one additional option or opportunity for folks who maybe are still looking for the right fit.
Racing and motorcycles all tend to be very masculine. Does Remix Recovery wind up with that same issue?
No, in fact, I would say that, just as I think about the group of folks who've kind of joined the Remix Recovery community and go to the groups and everything, that it's probably a fairly even split. And you're right. I think there are probably more men or people who identify as male who are part of the racing community, but there are a lot of women racers, and also on the crew and the support teams. And of course, a lot of family members love to come out and be part of the experience. And so, but Remix Recovery, not being affiliated with that, is really just about creating a space where anyone who is challenged by mental health, including addiction, wants to find a safe place to be brave and get vulnerable enough to heal, rediscover their most authentic self, connect with other people who are also on their healing journey. And so I don't think there's as much of an influence on things like, the kind of mix of people in that part of our operation as there is maybe in the racing.
So if someone is interested, how do they get in touch with you? How do they become a part of these groups?
Yeah, so we there's so many ways to do it, but the easiest is remixrecovery.org.
Okay.
And .org, we're a nonprofit, so not .com, but if you type it wrong, it'll direct you to the .org website. Even if you type in the remixracingproject.org, it'll direct you to our website. But remixrecovery.org, it has a lot of information about our racing, about our support groups, how to find the book, about our nonprofit. And by the way, everything we do is done on a volunteer basis. No, everybody who's part of our organization, whether on the board or volunteers, is doing it because they believe in what we're doing and they want to be part of it, and they want to help create access for people who want to find us and participate in what we're doing. And so even the books are available for free, but they can also be purchased, and all the proceeds for the book are donated back into the organization to help with operation expenses or to buy more books to give to people who either can't afford it or don't want to pay for it. And on remixrecovery.org, you can also find out about where the groups are. We've partnered with Connections, and one of the groups, we operate in a Peer Connections facility every other Tuesday afternoon. We also have a group that happens in person in Walnut Creek Thursday evenings. And then we also have a Zoom group to make it really easy for anybody anywhere, whether they don't want to leave their house or they don't have transportation or they're not local. And that's Saturday mornings from 11:30 to 12:30. And the link for joining that group is also on the website.
Excellent. Many times you've mentioned brave spaces.
Yeah.
Please talk about that.
Yeah, no, thank you. That is really kind of a fundamental concept of remix recovery. Several years ago, I was introduced to the term brave space. And the way it was explained to me is that it's a space where that we create between two or more of us where we can, bravely face difficult stuff together, whether it's a difficult topic that we need to talk about, maybe even, some tension in our relationship that we need to kind of work through and practice some conflict resolution skills or whatever. The thing is that even where I was hearing that term, I wasn't seeing it work that way. So it sounded like a nice idea, but maybe people didn't know how to cultivate that space.
Good concept, execution shaky.
Exactly. It fell a little short of the goal. So I started doing some research. There was, at that time, there wasn't a lot of information about how you build a brave space. I did find an academic paper written by this woman who was a professor at a school in Baltimore, Maryland, in the School of Social Work. So she taught graduate courses in social work. And she had written a paper called The 6 Pillars of a Brave Space. And I read it. I thought it was really fascinating, both because it talked about the concept, but also 6 pillars, which were essentially almost like instructions for how to do that.
Right.
And so I reached out to her and we had a long conversation about this. And she told me that after the George Floyd murder, that there were some really difficult conversations that were happening in the classrooms with her and her students, but also her colleagues and their students. And that a lot of her colleagues were complaining that they didn't know how to manage these conversations, and it felt very scary and uncomfortable, and it didn't feel productive. And she had just the opposite experience. She found that even though they were talking about a very kind of difficult issue.
Difficult, scary in some ways.
Yeah, upsetting.
You're talking about violence.
Exactly, yeah. And then also all the politics and cultural stuff around it.
Yeah.
But she said that she was able to have really healthy and productive conversations that felt safe while people were bravely kind of facing these difficult issues. And she thought, well, if I could do it and my colleagues can't do it, then maybe what I need to do is figure out what I'm doing that they're not doing or that I'm doing differently, and then teach them so I could support them in having, good conversations around these difficult issues. And so she wrote this paper with their 6 pillars. And as I was talking to her, I thought, this is really smart and I really like it. It was really about how to do this in an academic setting.
Yeah.
And what I had in mind was how to do it in a community setting. And so I with her permission, I adapted her ideas. I remixed them.
Yes.
Into what we refer to as the 4 walls of a brave space. And I chose walls instead of pillars because metaphorically walls frame a space like in a room. And the 4 walls are vulnerability, receptivity, integrity, and responsibility. And all of this, of course, is laid out in the book. And it's even talked about in our groups where we work to cultivate this brave space. But vulnerability, obviously, is just, built on a foundation of safety. It's being willing to be brave and talk about stuff that's uncomfortable or difficult, but maybe necessary to talk about. Whether it's something that's stigmatized or something that is going to create some kind of tension or intensity in the conversation, but it's important and it needs to be discussed in order to find some solution or some resolution if there's a problem. And then receptivity is what the other person or the other people are doing while that person is being vulnerable. They're creating a space where it's okay to just come as you are, right? Just show up as you are. Talk about what's on your mind. Be respectful, and make sure that we're treating each other with courtesy and in a way that's safe, psychologically, emotionally, physically, whatever. But that it's okay for you to be you in this space. And so that's the receptivity part. Integrity is obviously, that we show up in a way where our values and our behaviors are integrated. That's the integrity. That we say what we're going to do and we do what we say, but also that the space itself, that we work to maintain the integrity of the space, because integrity builds trust and establishes credibility, right? So if my behaviors are aligned with my values, you're more likely to trust me because you can count on whether you like it or not. It's reliable and predictable.
There was an old thing that happened in politics in 1964 where a bunch of black people were going to vote for Barry Goldwater, and they said, "You're voting for a Republican?" And this one old gentleman said, "Well, it's this way. He may be against me on some stuff, but I know he is, and I know he's going to stay that way. Lyndon Johnson's a Texan. You can't trust them." But integrity. He would rather face an honest foe than someone who may seem to agree but be slippery.
Right.
And that's what you mean by
exactly
integrity.
Right. Yeah. So you can count on me, whether you like it or whether you like me or what I stand for, what I believe in or not. You know what to expect. You get what you expect. But the space that we cultivate together can also have integrity, so that it's reliable and predictable, and we don't have to, wonder what it's going to be like every time we show up in the space. And so we can work together to make it feel familiar each time we come back to the space. And then the final wall is responsibility, is that it only works if we share responsibility to do it. And it's not a requirement that you must be responsible and I must be responsible. It's just an acknowledgement that unless we're sharing responsibility for cultivating that space, it doesn't really hold up. So those are the four walls. And what happens in a brave space, different from just a safe space, right? Like a safe space is a place where you can be really comfortable and not have to deal with difficult things, whether it's an idea or an issue or maybe some relationship tension or conflict. But if we're hiding from the difficult stuff, we get comfortable, but that can lead to complacency, and then we're also not developing the skills to deal with the difficult stuff.
We're not growing.
Yeah, so it can really stifle growth. And of course, if we're hiding out in a safe space, it's tempting to stay here longer or to come back here more often, and then we get less and less equipped to deal with the difficult stuff. So in a brave space, which has a foundation of safety, right? There's certain things that we need to do or agree to make sure that fundamentally it's safe for us. But in a brave space, we get to bravely face those difficult things. You may or may not have noticed that the subtitle of the book, Leading a Brave Space, the acronym is LABS.
Oh.
So we think of the brave space as a change laboratory. So we can practice doing things bravely, giving each other space to make mistakes or not do it well and then learn from that. We have a saying that we never lose, we either win or we learn. So so if I'm trying to deal with the difficult stuff and it doesn't work out, what can I learn from that so I can try again, remix my strategy and do it again and maybe do it more effectively?
But there's that great old saying, "Please, Lord, save me from another learning experience."
Yeah, well, in Remix Recovery and in our brave space, we really believe that every experience is a learning opportunity, whether it's working or not working or something in between. And learning is growing and changing. Change is hard, but when you start to embrace it and you experience the benefit from it, it not only gets easier, but you start to really enjoy the process. And so ultimately, the objective is to create a space where people can move from just surviving their mental health or addiction challenges to kind of rediscovering their most authentic self, who they are, what makes life worth living, what it is that is their true passion, their true values, live a life more aligned with those values. And it's a lifelong process. It's not a thing that just happens at a moment in time, but a lifelong process. And we do it together. So we refer to our groups as part of our Remix Recovery community. And like I said, we believe it's the most inclusive community and everyone is invited.
It's interesting. I'm part of a similar kind of subculture, if you'll allow the term. I'm a science fiction writer.
Oh.
And there is a huge science fiction community. On any given weekend, there's 1 or 2 science fiction conventions held throughout the U.S. The biggest one at the moment is Comic Con. Everyone knows about that in San Diego. That's sort of the mothership at the moment. But they literally happen all over the world. They're all volunteer run. And one of the things about them is for most of the fans who come there to the conventions continually, it is for them a safe space where they can be a furry.
Yeah.
They can be an Imperial stormtrooper. They can just be a fan and just sit there and listen to George R.R. Martin tell me all about Game of Thrones and writing it. But as a result, as you see in motorcycle racing that the community builds this safe space where lots of things can be explored.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing that same kind of thing that so many people in various stages of recovery feel so isolated and get looking for community. And maybe the angle is science fiction, maybe it's motorcycle racing. But you find that angle that lets you find that community, and that kind of lets everything else happen from there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, I actually addressed this in the book, but Irvin Yalom is considered widely to be kind of one of the premier experts on group therapy. And his model of group therapy is a little different than I think what most people would think of or maybe have experienced if they've done group therapy or a support group. He believes that it's an opportunity for people to practice relating to one another, practice developing healthy intimacy in the process. So not just talking about how I'm dealing with this stuff outside of the group with people in my life and then just reporting out and then getting feedback, but actually practicing it in the group. And what he teaches and what he's learned from all of his research is that one of the ways that mental illness manifests for an individual is in social dysfunction. It makes it hard. It makes it hard to navigate relationships, navigate the social environment. It makes it hard to experience intimacy that feels safe and healthy. Yeah. And he says, so, a lot of treatments for mental illness are about treating the condition or treating the diagnosis or whatever. He says, what if we create an opportunity for people to practice becoming more socially functional? Then the way that their mental health condition shows up in their life is less, it impairs their experience, their life less, right?
It's less destructive.
It's less destructive. He says, so maybe we don't need to worry about how people identify the problem. What if we just help people develop a way to live their life more effectively? And the thing that for humans, one of the things that matters most to us is how we get along with other humans. And so a lot of his ideas are incorporated into our Remix Recovery Brave Space model.
That's interesting because in the 70s, because I started my psych career in the early and mid 70s in college. I know you weren't around.
I was little, but I was around.
You were around, just barely. But a huge amount of time, and it got to be a big joke because it got so exaggerated, was talking about role playing and having people role play. And of course, it got to be very silly. But the essence of it, of modeling a social interaction, just learning to do that in itself, get up in front of somebody and then try to behave in a certain way, that in itself became a very liberating and growth experience for a lot of people. And again, as so many things, it was a fad, it got overemphasized and it drew back. But it sounds like, in a way, you're reaching back for some of that role play. Okay, you're going into your job interview, doing that kind of, talking about how to do job interviews and things by training within the group, right?
Yeah, the group is a place where, people can practice these skills, try them on. But and role playing would certainly be something that could happen in a group, but it can also just be about talking about something that just came up, something you just said when you shared in group that I was affected by, and the idea of a brave space is that I can bravely tell you, hey Mary, when you said that, I had this reaction. You didn't cause the reaction, but it kind of activated some stuff in me, and I just wanted to tell you about that so that you can have some awareness about it. Whether it was that I got upset or that I felt really moved or whatever the thing was, is that I'm talking about the experience here in the moment, which is not a thing that most of us do in our lives outside of a space like that. But also mental health challenges make it even more difficult to have those kinds of really kind of brave and intimate conversations around what we're experiencing right here, right now in this moment.
Right, because aside from the usual kind of inhibitions, there's that, is my reaction appropriate?
Right.
Is this an illness, or is this going to be seen as a symptom?
Yeah.
And that can be really intimidating.
It could be very intimidating. So we know that the reason that addressing toxic stigma is at the top of our kind of priority list as an organization is that we know that stigma is one of the greatest barriers to kind of help-seeking behaviors.
Yes.
Because of stigma, people are treated in a way that's very discriminatory. And when you've been subjected to discriminatory treatment, you're less likely to go back and ask for more. And so creating a stigma-free space, because, as people live their lives, they go into a lot of places where who they are and how they are and what they do, what they think, believe, and everything else is very stigmatized. So what if there's a space where that doesn't exist and a person can figure out, who would I be if I was just being me, not trying to live up to other people's expectations of me, not always worried that people are going to judge me negatively or treat me differently. And there's something really therapeutic about that experience.
Here at Connections, it's one of the things that it takes a while to settle into, but we're all Indians, as the old phrase goes. We're not chiefs, we're all Indians here. Everyone here has their own story, but we all have one.
Yeah.
No one here is even pretending to be absolutely normal, and I've never had any problems, and I don't know what you're talking about. We can't get away with that. That's not why we're members here.
Yeah.
And that, it's liberating. And both in being free to talk, but also in accepting what comes out. It may come at you strange. That's okay, because we're all a little strange here. Let's work this out.
Yeah.
And that feeling of it within this community has been just tremendous. And from the people I know that go to the remix recovery things at the PCC and come back, that feeling's very strong there and very important. They depend on it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So so that's what we do and why we do it, and it's a growing community. Within our community, there are people who really feel connected, find the right fit, and want to be more involved in helping to lead the space and create more access to our groups and to the community and that sort of thing. And then we provide opportunities to train and support people who want to be in kind of more leadership roles. And to your comment about, everybody here is the same. There's not, we don't put people on pedestals. Even our facilitators and our leaders identify as peers. And if you walked into a really well-established Remix Recovery group, it might be hard for you to figure out who's actually running it because everybody is sharing responsibility for running it together.
Yeah, it takes a while to figure out who's staff around here for the same reason.
Yeah.
And that egalitarian nature really reinforces.
Yeah.
It makes you as just a member, as just a client or whatever, a lot freer to say what may be very important but a little strange. But you feel freer to bring it out. And sometimes you find people go, you too?
Yeah. That's the best, right?
Oh, yeah. There is nothing like that. You too?
Yeah. Yeah.
It does it. So, 10 years from now, you probably won't be racing. So what are you going to be doing then?
Well, don't be so sure, but we'll see. Yeah, no, you're right. I'm actually obviously much closer to the end of my career than a lot of the people that I'm racing with. But so first of all, our nonprofit, and especially Remix Recovery, that actually became, and there's some other things we do, but growing our community, Remix Recovery, has become kind of our priority. It's like the flagship of all of our operations. And that's something that I have a lot of interest in growing. I have some, my vision is to grow it until there's not just groups all over the place, all over the country, maybe even outside of the country, but that we also have places like clubhouses similar to Connections, that maybe we have treatment programs that are based on that model, both residential and housing support and outpatient and that sort of thing. And I'd really like to continue to invest my energy and my ideas into that, to help grow the community and also to create a legacy, because everything that we do and when we're out there racing and we're racing to bring attention to these issues, all of us know that we're doing something that's bigger than any one of us, even bigger than our team. And that's, I really love being part of something that's growing far beyond its origins, right? And that we're touching lives of people we might not ever actually meet in person. For the racing, I want to continue to build the idea that we race for something important, not just for points and prizes. But that we're racing in a way that's really responsible, both in the racing community and the community at large, meaning that, we're rewarded with a lot of attention. We're rewarded with an opportunity to kind of leverage that visibility, that platform that we have. And I want to continue to build a team around the idea that we can use that to really do good, to make a positive impact in the community. And that might mean that other people are going to be doing the actual racing, be the pilots.
So how does your being a bonus dad fit into that?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So Shayna's daughter, Haley, who is my bonus daughter, that's the way we think of each other, bonus dad and bonus daughter. She is a regional champion. So she's been racing in the AFM for a number of years. And she holds an expert license, and she is fast, and she is really, really talented. And sooner or later, I'm hoping sooner, I'll hand the baton to her, and she'll enter Moto America as a national professional racer. And in fact, we just raced this last weekend in Washington, and after our last race, we were sitting watching some of the other races, and I told her, I said, as soon as you're ready, I'm going to get out of the way so that we could support your racing career. She's 20, so she has a lot more racing career.
Right at the age to start really blossoming into it.
Yeah, and
perfect age.
And she also has operated a third project or division of our nonprofit that we call Remix Roadshow, where she uses her own story, her own lived experience to go talk to other kids. She'll go into high schools or other places where people are interested in learning about, how to heal and recover and connect and everything else. And she teaches resiliency, psychological and emotional resiliency. And she talks about how racing motorcycles is her passion, and that you don't need to be a motorcycle racer to be able to get the benefit of chasing your passion. So this is my passion, she says. What's yours? And if you don't know, find it and chase it. And she teaches resiliency around a method that she refers to as RACE, because she's a racer. And the R stands for resilience, A is ambition, C is confidence, and E is empowerment. And so she teaches those skills in presentations in high schools and at resource fairs and out in the community. So she really lives the Remix Recovery model, but she's found a way to take it on the road, which is why she calls it Remix Roadshow. And so as a racer, she just is already an ambassador of what we do. And so, so at some point, I'm going to become team co-captain and support her on the crew that helps her go out and perform on the racetrack. but also to continue to do what, as a family and as a community, we've built as a platform to fight stigma, carry the message, connect people to resources.
You have done a wide range of things. And one of the things that keeps coming up in mind, you have run, it's called a PHP or Intensive Outpatient Program. There's 5150. We don't want to have to talk about that. There's other hospitalization. There's on your own seeing a therapist maybe once a month and your support group occasionally. And then in between, where do these different things fit in between?
Yeah, no, it's such an important question. So what you're referring to is the continuum of care, from maybe the lowest amount of intervention or support to the most intensive, in a hospital with psychiatric and medical and therapeutic care and housing and everything else. And then all the stuff in between. And I think the community at large doesn't really understand the continuum as well as as those of us who provide these services. I think it's our responsibility to inform the community and the people who might need these services. So often you see a commercial or an ad, even on social media, that basically says this therapy is the one size fits all for everything and everybody. And I think that actually runs the risk of doing more harm than good. If people need a lot of treatment and they only get a little, they tend to get worse, and they also get discouraged that it's not working and they might give up and stop looking for help. If people only need a little and they're put into a setting where they're getting too much, it might feel overwhelming and they might get confused about the size of the problem and the most effective solution to address it. So the first thing is that I think it's important for people to understand that there are all of these different resources, not because it's just about pick and choose, like at a buffet, but it's about finding the right fit for your needs and your preferences.
At that moment.
And then those are going to change. Yeah. And if you're familiar enough with the continuum of care, or if the people who are helping you in that moment know enough about it, then as you get better, you can move into a less intensive kind of treatment setting or a less intensive kind of support process. But if things get worse, then you should be moved into a setting that's really more equipped and more adequate.
Life can happen.
Life
Parent
happens.
pass away.
Yeah.
So things can happen that you think you're chugging along and all of a sudden there's that hole that you've fallen into.
Yeah.
And there isn't much knowledge in the world at large about that continuity. That I was very surprised myself to find out when I had my major crisis that after hospitalization, you mean it isn't just once a week and then that's all that you can offer me. That there was a PHP program, somewhere to go every day if I needed it every day. And that wasn't a good fit for more than a few months. Although I noticed something, and maybe you can talk about this, was that while for me it was a crisis intervention that helped me bridge and get through that couple months and move on, there are some people who've been stuck in that group for 10 years. Is it something that happens to groups that they start with these people in recovery but then they gradually accumulate chronic, or is it that I just stumble onto the wrong group?
It depends, right? And it can go in different ways for different people and situations. But if I get sick, my doctor might prescribe a round of medication, maybe an antibiotic that I need to take for 10 days. And then when I get well enough that I don't need it, I stop taking it. And if I kept taking it, it might not be good for me or might cause other kinds of problems. But I also take a multivitamin every single day just for health maintenance, right?
Yes.
And so they're it's the same way to think about therapy services or psychiatric services, that in a crisis, there's certain levels of care that are important to keep people safe and help them get through that crisis and get to a more stable place where they can make decisions, not just about how to stay safe, but how to then get back to moving in the direction they want to go, have the life that they want to have, and this kind of thing. But then there's also the maintenance stuff that we all need, right? A support group is a thing that you can be part of for life. And, that could be a really healthy thing. And individual therapy, like the weekly stuff, like a 50-minute or 1-hour weekly therapy session, that can also go both ways. I've heard stories, really concerning stories about therapists who operate more like a friend for hire. Somebody who gets paid to just, listen and kind of be I don't know, kind of be more in a friend role, almost like a surrogate friend. And I don't think that's a good use of a therapy relationship. But there's also therapy that's about helping people stay psychologically and emotionally fit, doing the maintenance, helping them not just learn and develop skills, but practice the skills, refine the skills, rely on the skills when life gets difficult again, continue to adapt skills that they use for previous challenges to new challenges they're facing. And that kind of therapy, I think it could be really healthy and productive and can last a long time. But a lot of the professional formal treatment that people get, whether it's a psychiatric hospital or a PHP, which is a partial hospitalization program, which is a very intensive outpatient treatment program, intensive outpatient programs, IOPs, aftercare groups, alumni groups, this kind of thing, they really are part of that continuum that meets the current need and preference, but might be more kind of temporary, to help somebody get to a place where they're less dependent on help from others, moving in a direction to becoming more independent. And as they do, they probably need less, and I think it makes sense for them to be offered or receive less of the professional services, and then start to rely more on the social support services, like support groups, like clubhouses, like building healthy relationships in their life with family and friends and that kind of thing.
It sounds like you've got a pretty smooth idea of how it should work. Boy, it doesn't.
No, you're right.
A lot of times.
Yeah. The system is probably more broken than it needs to be, and some of that is because of money and politics.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We obviously a lot of these services are very expensive, and sometimes I think they're maybe more expensive than they need to be or should be. Insurance companies, which is how a lot of people pay for these services, they all have different ideas about, what a person needs or what they should be entitled to. And so sometimes what a person gets is based on what insurance they happen to have. Yeah. And that's really unfortunate. But it is the reality. And so, some of the services that I think are really valuable if a person can connect with it is somebody who helps them kind of navigate all of those options. And maybe they don't have access to everything based on limited resources or whatever, but to at least find out what is accessible and what is the most appropriate, or what's likely to be the most effective based on what I have access to, what I can afford, or what I can fit into my life or whatever. But you're right, it doesn't work the way that it maybe should in principle.
Yeah. A lot of us have been through but it should have, but it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Oh, but it is.
Yeah. Right.
But we get there, and I'll tell you one thing that really helps us, remix and connections. I think we have gotten a good amount of information out of Jeremy today. I want to thank him for taking all his time and energy, and I want to thank all of you for listening and watching our podcasts. And we look forward to seeing you again here on Connected.